P11:48 p.m. Printer room, 41st floor. The fluorescent light above the machine hums at a frequency most people stop hearing after 10 minutes. Raymond Ossie has been hearing it for 16 months. Up he stands with a crumpled page in his hand, a page that was never supposed to leave this room. And on it, in language so clean it almost looks routine, someone has rewritten the future of a woman he has never spoken to. He doesn't know her. He knows her contract, friend. And right now, standing under that fluorescent hum, with the cleaning cart parked behind him and one squeaky wheel ticking against the carpet, he knows that somebody on this floor is stealing $470 million in broad silence. But Raymond Ossie is a janitor, and janitors don't get to say things like that out loud, not yet. The wheel had a sound, a small plastic clicking the front left caster on a cleaning cart that had been requisitioned sometime before Raymond started would probably outlast him. He had tried to fix it twice, WD-40, a rubber shim. Neither worked, so instead, he learned the floor. He learned which stretches of hallway had carpet seams wide enough to absorb the noise, and he timed his steps so the click landed there in the gaps where it bothered nobody. That was the kind of man Raymond was, kind who solved problems by making himself quieter. He pushed the cart through the 41st floor of Kendrick and Lowell 6 nights a week, starting at 10:15, finishing at 6 in the morning. A tall man with careful shoulders, deliberate hands. Hallways smelled like espresso. From a machine in the associates' lounge, a room with leather chairs, and a glass door that Raymond had cleaned the outside of 412 times, without once sitting down inside. He had been doing this for 16 months. Before that, 2 years driving a delivery van for a medical supply company. Before that was a different life. Raymond Ossie had been a third-year student at one of the most respected law schools for Black Americans in the country. 2 semesters from finishing, his contracts professor, a man named Achibi, who wore the same gray cardigan every Tuesday, had once read Raymond's paper on indemnification clauses out loud to the entire lecture hall. Didn't say who wrote it, just read it. Then looked at Raymond and gave him a nod that felt like a handshake. 2 semesters, that was all he had left. Nadine was diagnosed in the spring of his 3rd year. The doctors used a word that sounded clinical until it followed you home, play. By winter, they had attached a number to the word, and the number was small. Raymond filled out the withdrawal paperwork the next morning. The registrar asked him if he wanted to take a leave of absence. Instead, he said no, he didn't explain. Some decisions don't need explanation, they need speed. She died 3 years ago. The illness took her in pieces, first her energy, then her laughter, then her weight, then her voice, and finally on a Tuesday morning in November, everything else. The medical bills did not leave with her. Pardon me. They sat inside a brown envelope on top of the refrigerator in his apartment, a 2-bedroom unit in a working-class neighborhood on the city's outer edge, where the train ran loud enough to rattle the kitchen window at 6:14 every morning. Every other Friday, Raymond opened that envelope, moved a number from one column to another, and watched the total shrink by an amount so small it felt ceremonial, like placing a stone on a grave. You do it because you do it. He had a child, small one, with Nadine's eyes and a habit of asking questions Raymond couldn't always answer. Where does the moon go in the morning? Why does cereal get soft? Are you tired, Daddy? The child slept at Mrs. Delgado's apartment 2 doors down on the nights Raymond worked. Mrs. Delgado was 71 and had raised 4 children of her own and had never once asked Raymond for money. She left the porch light on until he came to pick up the child at 7:30 each morning. And that porch light was, on certain nights, the only thing in the city Raymond trusted completely. The child was the reason the brown envelope mattered. The child was the reason he had not, in 16 months, said a single word to anyone about what he was actually doing on the 41st floor. Because Raymond Ossie did not just clean, he read. The lawyers at Kendrick and Lowell left things behind, on purpose, on assumption. They left contract drafts on desks, in recycling bins, and the open trays of printers that hummed through the night. They left them because they did not see the man pushing the cart. He was furniture. He was the sound the building made after hours. He was the carpet underneath their shoes present, necessary, and entirely beneath notice. Raymond, who had been taught to read contracts by a man who wore the same gray cardigan, every Tuesday would pause at each discarded page. He would glance at it the way a retired surgeon glances at a wound. Quickly, precisely, and sometimes he would slide the page into the bottom compartment of his cart, beneath the trash bags and the spray bottles, and read it on his break. In that compartment, wrapped inside a plastic grocery bag to keep it dry, was a notebook. Brown cover, cracked spine, 16 months of entries. Page numbers, clause references, cross-checks against public filings. He pulled up on his phone in the basement break room, sitting on an overturned milk crate, with his back against the wall and the overhead pipe, dripping something he chose not to identify. He did not show the notebook to anyone. His father had told him once years ago, the cancer took his voice and then the rest, that a black man with sharp eyes had to keep them open wider than anyone else. And a black man with knowledge had to keep it somewhere no one could reach. His father had been a mechanic. He had said it while tightening a bolt on a stranger's engine, not looking up. The document doesn't care who reads it, son. It says what it says. You just got to be the one reading. Raymond remembered the bolt. Promptly, he remembered the grease on his father's knuckles. He remembered the way the words landed not like advice, but like a fact about the weather. Something that was true whether you liked it or not. Page 34 of the notebook had an entry from 5 months ago, torn scrap of paper he'd found in the recycling bin near the copy room, half a printout, coffee-stained, at the corner. It referenced internal accounting records for a company called Raymond Logistics. The numbers on that scrap didn't match the numbers in the public filing. Raymond had looked up on his phone that night, and he had written 4 words beneath it. DL double books, verify. He underlined it. He moved on. He didn't have enough to say anything. Not yet. On the floor above 42nd Corner office, 2 walls of glass facing the river, Simone Vaughn was reading 2. She was 41, chief executive of Vaughn Capital Group. She had not slept more than 4.5 hours a night in 9 weeks. Not since she agreed to acquire Raymond Logistics, $1.2 billion. The deal was supposed to close on Thursday. Her board, 7 men, all over 60, all appointed by her father, had described the acquisition in 3 separate meetings as her opportunity. They did not say to prove she deserved the chair. They didn't need to. The word they used was legacy, as in, this is your chance to define your legacy. As in, your father built this over 32 years and you had it for 2. Her father had died at his desk. Heart attack, pen still in his hand. The pen had been capped, which meant he'd finished whatever he was writing before he died. That detail stayed with Simone longer than the funeral. Hannah. She had walked into his office the following Monday and discovered that half the senior leadership believed she was a temporary arrangement, a name on the letterhead, until the board found someone with weight. She fired 3 of them within 30 days. The remaining 9 she watched, and they watched her back. That was how the company ran. She had been married once, briefly, to a man named Martin, who had described her in his wedding toast as the kind of woman who makes a man want to be extraordinary. He had meant as a compliment. Had left her 3 years later for a junior partner at his consulting firm, and Simone had learned in the divorce that being the kind of woman who inspired a man was not the same as being a woman a man stayed for. She did not date. She had a deal to close. Flat night, the night Raymond would later mark in his notebook. As a Monday, she left her office at 10:50, carrying a stack of red file folders and a laptop bag with a broken strap she kept meaning to replace. Pity. The elevator opened onto the 41st floor of Kendrick and Lowell, where her outside counsel maintained the war room for Project Meridian. She was supposed to drop the files with the night clerk. She was running on caffeine and the particular kind of willpower that women in her position develop, the kind that looks like calm but tastes like iron. She turned the corner. The edge of one folder caught the strap of her bag. The whole stack went down onto the carpet with the soft particular sound that important paper makes when it falls. A man in a gray work shirt knelt beside her instantly. He gathered the pages. He did not look at her face. He stacked them in the order they had fallen, which was not the order they belonged in, and he stacked them anyway. Then he handed them back with his eyes lowered. Careful hands. No hesitation. "Thank you," she said. "The way people say it to doors that open on time." He nodded. Paper. He returned to his cart The clicking wheel started up again, somewhere behind her, small, rhythmic, disappearing down the corridor. She walked the rest of the hallway without thinking about him at all. She would think about him later. She would think about the way he stacked those pages, wrong order, right instinct, and she would wonder what kind of man catches falling paper that without being asked. But that was later. Right now, be war room, and a Thursday deadline, and a board that used the word legacy, the way other people use the word test, panned, and somewhere beneath her in the basement, a man sat on an overturned milk crate with a brown notebook on his knee, writing in the margins of a page that somebody had thrown away. Miriam Tan worked the night desk on the 41st floor. She had worked it for 7 years. She was the kind of person buildings are built on, and nobody notices quiet, precise, invisible, in the way that competent women in support roles learn to be invisible. Because visibility, in their experience, mostly meant being handed more work without more pay. She typed closing memos. She organized binder tabs. Pada. She refilled the printer in room B when it ran out at midnight, which it did more often than it should have. She mentioned this to Raymond, once passing him in the hallway near both of them, moving through the building at an hour when the rest of the city had opinions about people who were still awake. Printer in room B ran again past midnight, she said. Not complaining. Observing. Third time this week. Nobody scheduled anything. Raymond noted it. He didn't respond beyond a nod, but he wrote it down in the notebook at the bottom of a page in handwriting so small it looked like a habit rather than a decision. He didn't know yet what the printer was doing at midnight. He would. The next night, a Tuesday, Raymond emptied the wastebasket in Grant Calloway's office at 1:20 in the morning. Calloway was a senior partner at Kendrick and Lowell. 49, kind of man, who wore authority the way some men wear cologne you smelled it before he entered a room. Raymond had cleaned his office every weeknight for 16 months. He had learned the man the way water learns a stone by moving around him, slowly, without ever being noticed. Calloway left coffee cups with a finger of liquid still in them. He kept a bottle of scotch in the bottom right drawer. He printed everything, even 3-line emails, and threw most of it away. That night, sitting on top of the recycling bin, was a stack of contract pages held together with a black binder clip. The cover sheet read, Vaughn Capital Project Meridian Draft 11. Beneath the title in pencil, someone had written 2 words, replaced, destroy. Raymond did not destroy it. He put it in the bottom compartment of his cart. He read it at 3 in the morning in the basement, sitting on the milk crate, notebook open on his knee, the overhead pipe dripping its slow, unknowable drip. By 3:40, hands had gone cold. The first problem was a definition. The phrase controlling interest appeared in the draft he was holding. It had a specific meaning. Any party holding more than 50% of voting equity in the named subsidiaries. That was the version Simone Vaughn's team had reviewed. That was what her in-house counsel had approved. But in the execution draft, the one Raymond had pulled from the binder room 2 nights earlier, the definition had changed. Controlling interest now referred to voting equity in the parent entity only. The subsidiaries had been removed from the language. No red line, no revision marker, just gone. What that meant, if Raymond was reading it correctly, and he had read it 7 times before he allowed himself to believe it was that $470 million in tax exposure. Currently sitting with the seller would, under the new language, transfer silently to the buyer. Simone Vaughn would walk into Thursday's closing, carrying a debt her own lawyers had told her didn't exist. The second problem was the page count. The drafts Simone's team had initialed ran 168 pages. The execution copy ran 171. 3 pages had been added. The binding had been restitched. The signature pages still carried dates from the previous review round, but the body underneath them was no longer the body her team had read. The third problem was the worst. Section 5.1 contained a cross-reference to Section 8.4 titled Indemnification of Buyer Against Pre-Closing Liabilities. That was the clause that protected Simone if anything in Raymond's books turned out to be wrong after closing. In plain language, it was the reason a buyer survived a bad deal. In the execution draft, Section 8.4 did not exist. It had been deleted. The cross-reference still pointed to it, but pointing was all it did. like a road sign for a bridge that had already been torn down. If Simone Vaughn signed this contract, he would absorb $470 million in hidden tax liability, and she would have no legal mechanism to recover a single dollar of it. Raymond closed the notebook. He sat on the milk crate without moving. The pipe dripped. The basement hummed its low, mechanical hum. He wrote 6 words on a yellow sticky note in block letters. Then he went upstairs. He found the Meridian binder in the war room on the 41st floor, sitting on the conference table where it had been left for the night. He opened it to the page where Section 5.1 referenced the missing 8.4, pressed the sticky note into the margin. He closed the binder. He went back to his cart. The next morning, the sticky note was gone. Binder was untouched. No one mentioned it. No one asked. He had expected that. He had not expected it would happen. Thursday night, 2 in the morning, small conference room, 41st floor. Raymond had the war room binder open on the table. The light of his phone moved across the pages, where Section 8.4 should have been, where the language that would protect a woman he had never spoken to was supposed to sit. The overhead lights came on. Grant Calloway stood in the doorway, jacket draped over one arm, keys swinging from the other hand. His face moved through 3 expressions in 2 seconds: surprise, recognition, and something harder. Something that looked like math. "What exactly are you doing in this room?" Raymond closed the binder. He placed it back on the table with both hands, the way a man sets down something that doesn't belong to him. "Cleaning the table, sir. You were reading. I watched you through the glass for 30 seconds before I turned that light on." There was no good answer. Raymond did not attempt one. Silence, he had learned, was sometimes the only door that didn't lock behind you. Calloway stepped inside. He let the door swing shut. He picked up the binder, weighed it in one hand the way a man weighs something. He's deciding whether to use as a weapon or a prop. Then he threw it, not at Raymond, across the table. The cover slapped open, and pages spilled in a long, ragged arc across the carpet. Contract language fanning out like a deck cards, dealt by someone who had stopped caring about the game. "You have no business on this floor. Not at this hour. Not in this room. Not with your hands anywhere near that binder." Raymond knelt. He gathered the pages, one at a time. He stacked them in the order they had fallen, which was not the order they belonged in, and he stacked them anyway. The same way he had stacked Simone Vaughn's folders 3 nights before. Same posture, same silence, same hands. He did not look up. He did not speak. He had grown up understanding that there were rooms where a black man did not get to choose how things ended, when a white man had already decided how they would begin. Only exit from those rooms was the door on your feet. Without a word, he set the pages on the table. He stood. He walked out. He rode the freight elevator to the basement. He sat on the milk crate, but Raymond had missed something that night. In the hallway outside the conference room, 20 feet from where Calloway had thrown the binder, Miriam Tan's desk sat against the far wall. Her monitor was dark. Her chair was empty, but the light on her desk phone was still on, which meant she had stepped away less than 5 minutes before. And the next morning before the sticky note vanished from the binder, Miriam opened her work log and copied 6 words from a yellow piece of paper she had noticed in the margin of a binder page that had been left open in the war room. She wrote the date. She wrote the time. She wrote that she had observed the note at 7:48 a.m. and that by 8:05, when she returned from the printer, it was gone. She did this because it was her habit. She logged everything unusual, not because anyone asked her to, but because 7 years of night shifts had taught her that being invisible didn't mean being blind. She closed her log. She went back to her memos. Raymond found Terrence Mackey by the freight elevator on Saturday morning at 6. Terrence was the only black professional Raymond had ever seen on the 41st floor, a paralegal who had been with the firm for 9 years. Navigating the building the way a man navigates a river he knows, has currents that could pull him under at any time. 2 of them had nodded at each other in hallways for 16 months. Weather. Sports. Nothing that left fingerprints. "I need a name," Raymond said. "Somebody on this floor who reads the work. Somebody with a conscience." Terrence studied him. Whatever he saw in Raymond's face took longer to process than a casual question should have. "Lauren Fielding," he said. 29. 6-year associate. She actually goes through every page the partners hand her. There's one person on this floor who still cares about what's true, it's her. Raymond thanked him. He went home. He slept 4 hours. He came back at 6 in the evening in his cleaning shirt and waited in the lobby cafe across the street until he saw Lauren Fielding walk out of the building at 7:40. He caught her at the corner, half a block from the entrance. He spoke her name first quietly, with enough distance between them that she could decide whether to stop. She stopped. She looked at him. The way associates look at people, they don't immediately place politely, efficiently, and without warmth. "Work the night shift at your firm," Raymond said. "I'm asking for 90 seconds. Not here, wherever you're comfortable." She shifted her bag. "I'm heading to the platform. Keep up." He did. He talked while they walked. He gave her the 3 discrepancies in the cleanest English he could manage without raising his voice. Section numbers, dollar amounts, missing clause. When he finished, they had reached the top of the subway stairs. Lauren Fielding looked at him with an expression that was not unkind, but was very, very careful. "What's your name?" "Raymond Osei. And your maintenance staff?" "Yes, ma'am." How does someone on the cleaning crew read a contract like that? He had rehearsed this answer in his apartment that afternoon. Still cost him something to say it. 3rd year of law school, one of the top programs for Black students in the country. "I left before finishing. Why, my wife was dying." Lauren looked past him at the stairs going down. She was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, not cruelly, but with the precision of someone who understood exactly how the building she worked in processed information. "Raymond, I hear you. I do. But I cannot walk into a senior partner's office and tell him that a man from the cleaning crew without a law degree found fraud in a billion-dollar acquisition. It's not about whether you're right. It's about whether anyone listens past the first sentence. That's just how it works." She paused. "If you believe what you found is real, there's an internal ethics line. That's the proper channel. Trip it down the stairs." She didn't look back. Raymond stood at the top of the station entrance. The evening crowd moved around him, splitting, reforming, indifferent. And he understood, with a clarity that felt almost like relief, proper channel was a locked door with a sign on it that read proper channel. What he did not know, could not have known, was that Lauren Fielding would mention him at lunch the following day. She told the story lightly, almost fondly. A sidewalk encounter. A janitor who could cite section numbers from memory. 4 people at the table. One of them was Grant Calloway. Grant laughed at the right moments, asked one question casual, almost bored about which sections the cleaner had referenced. Lauren, flattered that a senior partner was paying attention, told him. He laughed again. He returned to his office at 1:15. Closed the door. He did not laugh after that. Fraud. By 3 o'clock, he had made 2 phone calls. The first was to Human Resources. The second was to a number that did not appear in the firm's directory. A cell phone belonging to a man named Douglas Pratt. Douglas Pratt was outside counsel for Raymond Logistics, the company being acquired. He was the man on the other side of the table. And he was the man who had drafted the replacement language that turned Section 8.4 into empty air. The arrangement between Calloway and Pratt was simple. Pratt rewrote the clauses. Calloway swapped the pages. They communicated through personal email accounts that never touched the firm's servers. If the deal closed on the altered terms, Raymond would shed $470 million in tax liability, and Pratt's success fee would triple. It was Pratt who had been using the printer in Room B past midnight, running new pages, formatted to match the originals, on the firm's own machines. The printer Miriam had mentioned, the one nobody had scheduled. That afternoon, Calloway and Pratt agreed on 2 things. First, the cleaner had to go before Thursday. Second, if the cleaner had spoken to anyone at Vaughn Capital, they needed a document that would make sure no one believed him. Pratt drafted it that evening. 4 pages, firm letterhead, courtesy disclosure, addressed to Simone Vaughn, detailing Raymond Osei's incomplete education, his outstanding medical debt calculated to the dollar, his employment gap, his suspension from the firm for unauthorized handling of confidential materials. A final paragraph, carefully worded, noting that Mr. Osei had made unsolicited contact with the chief executive of Vaughn Capital under circumstances the firm found concerning. It was not a letter. It was a demolition. Raymond's badge stopped working at the loading dock on Sunday night at 9:50. The reader beeped twice. Red light. He swiped again. Red light. Peace. Stepped back and looked up at the security camera the way a man looks up at a sky that just went dark without warning. His supervisor came through the inside door a minute later, printed sheet in hand, firm letterhead on top, would not meet Raymond's eyes. Administrative leave without pay, pending investigation, unauthorized handling of confidential materials. Raymond asked about his locker, about a photograph inside it. That'll have to go through security, Pert, at a later date. Took the train home. He sat at the kitchen table without turning on the light, the brown envelope on top of the refrigerator, Nadine's photograph on the windowsill, $63 in his wallet. Outside, the neighborhood did what it did on a Sunday night at 10. Carried on without asking whether he was still part of it. He waited a full day, tried to sleep, couldn't, tried to eat. The cereal tasted like the box it came in, his child. Sat across the table that morning with Nadine's eyes and asked him why he wasn't going to work tonight. Raymond said he had a day off. The child accepted this the way children accept things completely, and without the suspicion that would have been earned. Monday night, 1 in the morning, Raymond took the train back into the city. Peace stood across the street from the Kendrick and Lowell Tower, until he saw the night security guard step out for his cigarette the way the guard stepped out every night at 1:15, regular as a clock that smoked. Hector Salinas, 58, heavy man with steady hands who had worked the lobby desk for 22 years. Fluent. Raymond had brought him coffee on cold nights, black 2 sugars in a paper cup from the bodega on the corner. He had asked about Hector's grandchildren by name. Hector had never asked Raymond anything personal in return, but he had watched the man push a cart through that lobby for 16 months, and Hector was the kind of man who noticed when someone was carrying something heavier than what was in the cart. Raymond crossed the street. He told Hector what had happened. Plain, no extras. Then he asked, not for a favor, but for a chance if he could go up to his locker and collect a photograph of his wife. Hector looked at him for a long time, finished his cigarette, ground it under his shoe with the slow, deliberate motion of a man making a decision he already knew the cost of. 12 minutes, he said. Service elevator. I was inside. Raymond went up. He never made it to the locker. The service elevator stopped on the 41st floor. The doors opened. Simone Vaughn was standing in the corridor, briefcase in one hand, laptop bag with a broken strap in the other, looking like she had been worked since yesterday morning, which she had. She saw him. He saw her. The elevator doors began to close. Her hand came up and caught them. Not a decision, a reflex. Something in the way he was standing in a building he no longer had permission to enter. At an hour, no one with good news is awake, made her hold that door. You caught my papers, she said. In the hallway. Yes, ma'am. She did not ask what he was doing there. She looked at him the way someone looks at a sentence they've read before but suddenly understand differently. Then she stepped into the elevator with him. Lobby, she said. The doors closed, 40 floors. Raymond had ridden this elevator 1,000 times. He had never ridden it with someone who could change anything. Miss Vaughn, I know I shouldn't be in this building. I have no standing to tell you anything. His voice was steady. His hands were not. Plus, but if you sign the Draymond acquisition on the schedule, your counsel has given you, your company will take on $470 million in tax liability that your team doesn't know exists. Pan, the clause that was supposed to protect you from exactly that has been cut from the version you'll be signing. The floor indicator clicked. 38, 37. I've read every draft of that contract that has passed through this firm's offices in the last 9 weeks, in recycling bins, on conference tables at 3 in the morning. I've documented every change. The document your team approved is not the document sitting in that binder. 25, 22, 20. I'm telling you this because I have nothing left to protect by staying quiet, and you have 1.2 billion reasons not to ignore it. Elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened onto Hector's empty desk. Simone did not move. She pressed the hold button. 5 minutes. Not here, my car is downstairs. If I decide you've wasted even one of those minutes, I will make certain that no firm in this city allows you near a legal document again. She paused. What is your name? Raymond Osei. Where did you study, Mr. Osei? Law school, third year. One of the top programs for Black Americans. I didn't finish. Why not? My wife had cancer. Something shifted behind her eyes. Not softness recognition, kind that comes from a specific place. My mother scrubbed floors in a city up north until she was 46, Simone said. Never finished high school. So don't think your resume moves me. I care about whether you're right. She let go of the button. Get in the car. 26 minutes later, Raymond sat across a glass desk on the 48th floor of the Vaughn Capitol building, brown notebook open between them. He walked her through the three discrepancies, clause by clause, page by page. She did not interrupt. She did not take notes. She listened with her whole body, way people listen when the stakes have become physical. When he finished, she closed the notebook with her hand still resting on the cover. If even one of these is wrong, I will bury you. If they're right, you'll hear from me. Either way, do not contact me until I reach out first. Understood? Yes, ma'am. She had her driver take him home. He did not sleep. He sat in the kitchen with the lights off and the brown envelope above the refrigerator glowing faintly in the streetlight through the window, waiting for a call from a woman who had told him not to call. He waited 2 days. Call did not come. What Raymond did not know was that Simone had started checking his claims the moment her car pulled away from his building. She had her general counsel pull the Meridian execution drafts Tuesday morning by afternoon. 3 different versions sat on her desk, all stamped final, all matching the language her team had originally approved. Controlling interest read the way it was supposed to read. Section 8.4 sat where it was supposed to sit. Page numbers ran clean 1 through 168. Callaway had been thorough. Clean versions had been pushed into every system Vaughn Capital had access to. The tampered copy existed in one place. Only the execution binder locked in the war room at Kendrick and Lowell, scheduled to be opened Thursday morning. Wednesday morning, Simone had read every page her system showed her 3 times. Found nothing. Hooked. She sat at her desk at 8:15 with the file open and an unfamiliar feeling settling into her chest. The feeling of having possibly been played. The feeling deepened at 9 when her assistant brought in the morning packet, on top a sealed envelope from the office of Grant Callaway, marked confidential. For S. Vaughn only. 4 pages. Firm letterhead. Raymond Osei's life disassembled, itemized, and arranged in the specific language lawyers use when they are being cruel, and calling it procedure. She read it twice, set it down, walked to the window, stood with her back to the desk for a long time. She had been told since she was 23 that her instincts could not be trusted. Her father had said it privately. His board had said it in meetings. And the lesson she had absorbed, the lesson every woman in her position eventually absorbs, was that when her gut said one thing, the paperwork said another. The paperwork was safer ground. The paperwork said Raymond Osei was wrong. Or worse, she did not call him. She did not return his calls when he tried twice on Wednesday evening from a number that had already been disconnected from her line. Callaway's people had been thorough. Raymond tried 6 times total, left 2 voicemails, both short, both steady. Then he stopped. Wednesday night, a park bench 3 blocks from his apartment. The notebook closed on his knee, streetlights, casting long shadows across the pavement. The apartment buildings across the road, glowing with the yellow light of other people's. Evenings, dinners being cooked, televisions murmuring, children being told to brush their teeth. Raymond sat there and did the math. 63. No income. The eviction notice had been slid under his door that morning, 2 months overdue. The landlord's patience finally converted into paper. His child would ask questions at breakfast. Poopas. He was running out of answers that didn't taste like lies. He had walked into an elevator with the chief executive of a billion-dollar company. He had asked her to believe him over the firm she had been paying for 9 weeks, and he had been not surprised exactly. More like confirmed. The world worked the way it had always worked. The man with the notebook lost. The man with the letterhead won. He thought about staying on the bench until morning. He thought about not going home at all. He thought for one long, still moment about opening the notebook and tearing out every page, one by one, and letting the wind carry 16 months of careful work into the gutter. He didn't. He sat there, and he didn't. That was when his phone buzzed. Parents Mackey. The message was short. Heard about your suspension. If you still have those notes, diner on 9th, 1 hour. There might be one more thing. Raymond read it twice. He put the notebook in his coat pocket. He stood up. Diner. Smelled like burned coffee and floor cleaner. Parents sat in a booth near the back, both hands wrapped around a cup he wasn't drinking. He had spent 9 years inside Kendrick and Lowell, 9 years of doing his job well and doing the math of when to speak. He was speaking now because the math had changed. That morning he had walked past a conference room and heard Grant Calloway on speakerphone laughing. Laughing about a janitor who thought he could take apart a billion-dollar deal with a notebook. Terrence had stood in the hallway with a stack of expense reports in his hand and listened to his senior partner laugh in a way that made him understand with a clarity that felt like the last day of something exactly what kind of building he had worked in for 9 years. He told Raymond the plan. Simple, maybe pointless, but real. On the prep team for Thursday's closing to paralegals. Do the final binder check at 7 a.m. One of them. I can put your pages behind the indemnification tab. If anyone opens it, they see what you found. Calloway will check first. Probably. He'll take them out. Probably. Then what's the point? Terrence looked at him across the table. The fluorescent tube above the counter buzzed the particular frequency of diners past midnight, the sound nobody hears unless they've run out of other things to listen to. Because if he takes them out, that's still something. And because I'm done being the man who saw it and said nothing. They worked until 2:30. Freeman copied the 3 key pages in block letters onto clean sheets, labeled each one, cross-referenced to contract sections, put them in a manila envelope, handed it to Terrence. Terrence put it in his briefcase. He went home. He did not sleep. 7 a.m. Thursday. Terrence walked into the war room with the binder under his arm and the envelope behind the indemnification tab, exactly where he said it would go. 7:18. Grant Calloway entered the war room alone. Terrence was in the kitchen at the end of the hall. Through the glass clear as a screen he watched. Grant opened the binder, flipped pages, reached the tab, stopped. 30 seconds, no movement. Just his eyes on the pages and his jaw doing something very small and very tight. Then he pulled them out. Folded them once, walked across the hall to the shredder, fed them in 1 page at a time. The machine made its sound, the sound paper makes when it stops being evidence and becomes nothing. Terrence set down his coffee cup. His hand was shaking. He went to his desk, took out his phone, typed 5 words. All gone. He destroyed them. Raymond read the message at 7:32. Sitting in a 15-year-old sedan parked 4 blocks from his apartment. Paused. The notebook on the passenger seat, $63 in his wallet. Eviction notice in the glove box. Picked. He set the phone face down on the dashboard. He picked up the brown notebook, held it with both hands, felt the cracked cover, the weight of 16 months. He thought about throwing it into the street. Then he heard his father's voice, not as memory, but as fact. The way weather is a fact. The way gravity is a fact. The document doesn't care who's reading it. It says what it says. He set the notebook back on the seat. He started the car. Raymond drove into the city in the only suit he owned, P. He had bought it for Nadine's funeral 3 years ago. Back it hung a little looser across the shoulders than it had then. Night shifts and grief had taken weight off. He hadn't noticed losing. He wore it with the one white shirt that still had buttons on both cuffs. Brown notebook rode under his arm like a second heartbeat. He parked 4 blocks from the tower. He walked the 4 blocks slowly. The morning was sharp and clear, Celtic. Traffic did what traffic did at 9 in the morning, moved and stopped and moved again. Indifferent to the man on the sidewalk. With a cracked notebook and the funeral suit, he reached the lobby at 9:45. Hector Salinas was at the security desk. Hector looked up, took in the suit, took in the notebook, took in the way Raymond was standing, not like a man sneaking in, but like a man walking into something he couldn't walk away from. "Your badge is gone," Hector said. "I know. You understand what happens to me." "I do. I'm not asking." Hector looked at him for a long time. Then he looked down at his console. His thick, steady finger found a key and pressed it. The turnstile clicked open. "Don't waste this." Raymond walked through. The elevator opened onto the 41st floor. Daylight made everything different. The carpet looked newer. The art on the walls looked like it cost more. The air smelled like coffee that belonged to other people. He passed Miriam Tan's desk. Procchia. She looked up, saw the suit, saw the notebook. Something crossed her face, not surprise, but the expression of a woman who had been waiting for a piece to land without knowing what the puzzle looked like. "Yellow note in the binder last week," she said quietly. "That was you." Raymond stopped, nodded. Miriam opened the thick logbook beside her keyboard. She tore out a single page carefully along the perforated edge and held it out to him. On it, in her neat handwriting, the contents of the sticky note, the date, the time 7:48 a.m. and one additional line, "Observed note removed from binder by G. Calloway at approximately 8:05 a.m. same morning." Raymond looked at the page. He looked at her. "I don't understand everything you're doing," Miriam said. But I know what it's like to be invisible in a building where you show up every day." He took the page. He placed it inside the notebook, pen. And for the first time in 16 months, somebody on the 41st floor had seen him not as the cart, not as the squeaky wheel, not as the man who emptied the recycling, but as a man holding something that mattered. Heck, he walked toward the war room. Through the glass wall, he could see the meeting before he reached the door. Vaughn sat at the head of a long table, dark charcoal suit, hands folded on top of the leather portfolio that held the contract. Grant Calloway stood at her right shoulder, fountain pen in hand, extending it toward her like an offering. Philip Renner, the founding partner, sat across the table with two associates flanking him. Douglas Pratt sat on the far side, representing Raymond Logistics, a water glass untouched in front of him. Raymond pushed the door open. Broom stopped. 7 heads turned. Calloway's hand, the one holding the pen, stayed frozen in the air above the binder. A young legal assistant rose near the door. "I'm sorry, Mr. Renner. I don't know how he's security." Calloway's voice came out sharper than he intended. "This man was terminated. He has been making unauthorized contact with Ms. Vaughn. He removed confidential documents from this floor. He has absolutely no enough." Simone had not raised her voice. One word, speaking volume. But the room landed on it the way a wheel lands on a curb, hard, sudden, complete. She rose from her chair. She did not look at Calloway. She looked at Raymond. Her face did something he would think about for a very long time afterward, which was that it did not change at all. She'd been running her own calculations for 4 days. Those calculations had finished somewhere in the last 60 seconds. "Spoke with this man 4 nights ago," she said. "In my building, in my office. I have received no contact from him since. I have been given several pieces of information about him by this firm, and in the past several hours, I've found reason to question every single one of them." She paused. "Let the silence do its work. Mr. O.C., the floor is yours. Take whatever time you need." Raymond stepped to the corner of the table. He set the brown notebook down, opened it to the first page marked with a yellow tab. He did not speak like a lawyer, spoke like the man he was, a father who had been told he couldn't read by people who had never bothered to ask. "This contract has 3 issues. I'll walk you through each one. I'll show you where it sits in the binder. If anyone here wants to verify what I'm saying against the version history in your firm's archive, I'll wait." He took them through the first discrepancy, the definition, the vanishing subsidiaries. He took them through the second, the page count, restitched binding. He took them through the third, the deleted clause, the cross-reference pointing to empty air. Pave the dollar amount twice. Some numbers need to be heard twice. Then he placed Miriam's page on the table, the log entry, the timestamp, the line that read G. Calloway in handwriting that was not his own. Your outside counsel was made aware of these discrepancies. A written note was placed inside this binder. It was removed by hand and destroyed. Then he opened the notebook to page 34. The entry from 5 months ago, coffee-stained scrap. The 4 words he had written and underlined and carried without understanding why until now. "I don't have proof of this last part, past, but if your auditors examine the internal accounting records of Raymond Logistics, I believe the $470 million in tax exposure is not the only thing that's been hidden." Douglas Pratt's face changed. It changed the way a window changes when a stone hits it, not all at once, but in a crack that moves outward from the center. Raymond had not looked at Pratt until this moment. He didn't need to. The crack was audible. Philip Renner's voice came from across the table. Quiet, the kind of quiet that is louder than shouting. "Sit down, Mr. Pratt." Pratt sat. Raymond closed the notebook. I'm not an attorney, ma'am. I have 2 good eyes and a child who needs me home tonight. Simone turned to Philip Renner. I want the full version control archive of this contract opened in this room within 20 minutes. Every draft from the past 9 weeks. Mr. Calloway and Mr. Pratt will remain at this table. My outside auditor will be on the phone. And no one in this room touches that binder until all of that is done. Philip did not argue. He reached for his phone. Calloway reached for his. Put it down, Calloway. Philip had not raised his voice. He said it the way a man says something when he has already understood a thing he wishes he hadn't. 23 minutes later, the version control logs glowed on a laptop in the center of the table. The audit took less than an hour. The discrepancy, they had been there since the night Raymond first found them in the recycling bin. The trail of edits traced through a single user account, Grant Calloway's, and the external emails between Calloway and Pratt, pulled at Simone's request within the hour, confirmed what Raymond's notebook had mapped in the dark. Calloway tried to explain. Tried twice. The second time, Philip Renner raised one hand without looking at him. Calloway stopped talking. He did not start again. 2 security officers walked him out at 12:40. He did not take his briefcase. Pratt was detained for a formal statement. The state bar would be notified by evening. Criminal referrals by end of week. Simone asked the room to be cleared. Everyone except Raymond, Philip, and her general counsel. When the doors closed, she turned to Philip. I will close this acquisition. Prue. He'll close it with this firm because the firm is larger than one partner, and because the man across from me just learned what kind of house he's been running. But I have one condition. Mr. Ossie sits in the final review. As my consultant, paid as my consultant. Every page that enters the closing binder passes through his hands first. If that's not acceptable, I move the deal to another firm by Monday. Philip looked at Raymond, looked at him the way a man looks at someone he has walked past in his own hallway for 16 months without seeing. That's acceptable. Simone turned to Raymond. Can you stay for 48 hours? Raymond thought about the eviction notice. The charter kitchen table, 2 doors down from a home that was about to stop being a home. I need to handle something this afternoon. 1 hour. After that, I'm here as long as you need. Simone studied him. Something moved behind her expression, not pity, not admiration, pits. Something closer to the feeling of finding a door you didn't know was there. Take my car. Handle what you need. Then come back. Raymond picked up the brown notebook. Plop. He walked out of the war room on the 41st floor of Kendrick and Lowell at 1:11 in the afternoon. Funeral suit, loose shoulders, cracked notebook under his arm. He did not look back. Conditions Simone set in that war room held for 48 hours. Then they held for 48 weeks. Raymond did not return to his cleaning job. Philip Renner created a position that had never existed on the firm's organizational chart, Senior Document Compliance Analyst. Salary, $110,000. The firm paid his final year of tuition in full. Packed. The dean of the law school flew in to discuss readmission personally. The eviction notice was settled with a single check from the firm's accounts payable. The brown envelope came down from the top of the refrigerator 6 weeks later and went into a drawer. Not gone, but no longer the first thing he saw every morning. Terrence Mackey was promoted to senior paralegal in the same memorandum that announced Raymond's position. Hector Salinas received a personal letter from Philip Renner, and the first raise the lobby staff had seen in 9 years. Pirium, and the night clerk, whose logbook had held. The one piece of evidence Calloway didn't know existed was formally recognized in the internal investigation file. She did not receive a promotion. For the first time in 7 years of night shifts, someone knocked on her desk and said, "Thank you." Lauren Fielding left the firm in the spring. No public reason, none needed. Douglas Pratt's license was suspended. Separate criminal investigation followed. The acquisition closed in October. Corrected price. Indemnification language restored. Controlling interest defined the way it was supposed to be, defined the way it had been before. Someone decided that a cleaning cart and a squeaky wheel meant nobody was watching. Then there was a second deal, a third. Simone discovered, in the months after the closing, that she preferred to have someone across the table who read every word the way Raymond read every word, not fast. Not for show, but the way a man reads, when reading is the only power anyone ever trusted him with. Peace. She didn't know not right away that she also preferred having him there for other reasons. Pushed it. She figured that out slowly. He figured it out before she did and said nothing about it for a long time. Because Raymond Osei was a man who had been told his entire life what he could and could not reach for, and he had learned to wait until a door opened from the other side before walking through it. The door opened on a Thursday in late spring, 9:45 at night, a meeting that had run 4 hours long. The two of them alone in the conference room at Vaughn Capitol. Simone standing at the window, arms folded, looking at the lights of the bridge. "Why didn't you go back to school before all this? I thought I'd lost the right to want that." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." She turned around, looked at him across the empty table. "You never lost it, Raymond. You set it down for a while so you could carry someone who needed you more. Setting something down is not the same as letting it go." He didn't know what to say to that. Didn't try. She walked toward the door, stopped beside his chair. Close enough. She didn't touch him. Didn't need to. "Get some rest, Mr. Osei." Monday, she left. 12 months after the morning he walked through Hector's turnstile, Raymond received his law degree in an envelope addressed to his office at Vaughn Capital Group. Simone had hired him the week before as general counsel. The brown notebook lived in the top drawer of his desk. He still used it. He had started a second one. On the wall behind him hung a framed yellow sticky note. In his own block handwriting, 6 words about a mismatch in Section 8.4. Beside it, a photograph. Him and Simone on graduation day. Not touching. Standing close enough that anyone who knew them understood what the picture meant. He had been told his whole life that he was the kind of man people walked past. Turns out all it took was one person to stop. Sitting with this story, as long as I have the moment I keep circling back to, isn't the boardroom. It isn't the elevator, it's Miriam Tan. A woman at a desk at the end of a hallway, copying 6 words from a sticky note into a logbook because that's what she did. Nobody asked her to. She noticed. She logged everything unusual not because it was her job, but because 7 years of being invisible had taught her that seeing things and writing them down was the only power anyone had ever let her keep. Raymond had the courage, Simone had the authority, but Miriam had the one thing neither of them could produce. At the moment it mattered most: proof. I think we all know a Miriam. The one who notices, the one who writes it down, the one nobody asks. And I think on the right day we get to be one. So let me ask you this gently before you click away. Who is the person in your world right now that everyone else keeps walking past? The coworker nobody asks for an opinion. The neighbor with the quiet eyes. One refilling the coffee while a room full of people decides her future. Ask them what they see. Just once. You might be surprised. And if this story moved something in you, tell me about it in the comments. I read them. Everyone, hell. Me about the time you noticed something nobody else did. Poor. The time someone stopped for you when they didn't have to. Those stories, the ones about being seen, those are the ones that make this worth doing. Hit subscribe if you want more of this. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And remember what Raymond's father told him, because I think it's true for all of us. The document doesn't care who's reading it. It says what it says. You just have to be the one reading. I'll see you in the next one.